To begin with, this is our first paper. This is our first paper, rhetorical analysis. It's not due until the 10th, so slightly less than a month from now. It's 2 to 3 pages. Of course, we all know that that means 2 pages. With that in mind, I want to make the point really quick because you guys get real cute about what constitutes a page. 2 pages means the bottom of the second page. Or at the very least, you're missing like a few lines from the bottom of the second page. It's just 2 pages. It's double space. I believe in you. Okay? I think you can do it. At the top of the second page is 1 page. And bear in mind, you can't say anything in 1 page. You really can't. You'll see when we get there. All right. The rest of this format, we're going to talk about that. Maybe not today. We might save that for next week, given the time constraints we find ourselves within. But it's MLA. Is anybody not familiar with MLA? Like you've never heard of it? Cool. All right. We will review it. It will be fun. But I have it kind of delineated here. You know, double spaced, 12 point. It says standard. We mean Times New Roman, right? Source text. The Social Dilemma. Documentary on Netflix. Hope you guys watched it. Not too bad, right? Not the best thing maybe you've ever seen because it's a documentary. It's not like there's no explosions or anything. It's informative, I feel like. Pretty applicable, probably, for most of you. Scared the shit out of me because I have kids. You know. What the paper is. This is the part where I hope there's a marker in this room.
There's one in
There's one over here.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna try these, and then depending on how that goes, those will be my backups. What is this paper? What is rhetorical analysis? I assume some of you are familiar with the idea of rhetoric. When I say rhetoric or rhetorical analysis, do any of you perhaps think of a certain shape? Yeah.
Like when you're analyzing like logos, pathos, and ethos.
And that's always, pretty much always expressed in what shape?
Logos is logic.
No. Talking about geometry right now, dog. The damn triangle, right? And yeah, you got your fancy Greek terms, and this is dead. Hang on. Oh, everybody saw that, right? That's the only cool thing I'm going to do all day. So, anyway. That's better. And, oh, wait, ethos. Now, these are fancy Greek terms, and some of you may be familiar with them. They are applicable, super applicable, in fact, to what we're going to be doing this semester. However, what you should not do, I like to tell you guys about little traps that are out in front of you don't even know about, right? This is one of them. What you should never do is some iteration of, this is an example of ethos or whatever, right? That's just you pointing at a thing and labeling it. What we're going to work on, and it's going to start today, is you can talk about how a thing is perhaps ethos or pathos or logos. And by the way, sidebar, if some of you right now are like, I don't know what any of these fucking words mean, we're going to talk about it. Don't freak out, okay? But if you feel like something in the documentary is an example of pathos, say, your job will be to tell me why that is. Spell out your thought process. Prove to me that it's pathos or whatever, right? You're making arguments, so you got to convince me. You can't just tell me a thing is a thing. You have to explain to me how or why, right? Always, every paper you write in this class, 1102 if you don't test out of it or whatever, right? Always, how or why. If you're answering one of those questions, you're probably good. Make sense so far? Great. Let's talk about these. To begin with, well, I'll ask you guys. I mean, you knew, but does anybody know what any of these words mean?
I can't read them.
Oh, really? Let me see if we turn a light on. Maybe that'll help. Are they a little faint as well?
Yeah. Is there any marker?
Yeah, I could try. Did that help?
Yeah.
No,
Oh.
Ooh, let's try this one. This one is very fancy. Oh yeah, that's good. Better?
Yeah.
Outstanding. All right. These words. Anybody know what they mean?
Doesn't ethos relate to like emotion? Or is that
No, you would think it does. I mean, Greeks are weird, right? And the people that spoke like this are dead. But pathos does. It's actually where we get the word pathetic. Now, we've come to kind of have a different meaning for the word pathetic when you say a thing is pathetic, right? Like all those puppy commercials with Sarah McLachlan in the background, like something worth being pitied, right? Is what we mean by pathetic. The old school use of that term is talking about the emotion you feel to get to pity, right? It evokes an emotion out of you. I mean, again, some of you might be monsters. I don't, but I can't watch those commercials, right? With the dogs that I swear to God they must hose down before or something, like just to make them look worse, right? Because it gets a rise out of me. It makes me feel bad. By the way, I'm not adopting a dog, so I'm just gonna feel bad, I guess. That's a pathetic appeal. Also importantly, it's not just sadness that we're talking about when we talk about an emotional appeal. It can be happiness. It can be all anger, I suppose, fear. It can be all sorts of emotional appeals is what they call them, right? So if I'm making an argument, like the movie is, I hope that's pretty clear. This movie's making arguments to you, trying to convince you of things. Sometimes it's trying to appeal to your emotions. And there can be all kinds of different kinds, but that would be a pathetic appeal. That would be pathos. Follow? Cool. Which one do you guys want to do next? Yeah.
Logos is logic.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Logic.
It is where we get that term, right? To say something is logical. And I think we all more or less know what that means, right? Like you're using facts to prove an argument, right? It makes sense. I think a better descriptor for logos is reasonableness. Because when we think of logic, we think of truth, right? Not all arguments are truthful. I don't know if you know this. Sometimes people will try to convince you of something by lying to you. Sometimes that lie, they don't mean it, right? They don't mean to lie. Maybe they have bad information, right? Classically, the story with Columbus was a bunch of people doubted him. You can't do this thing because the world is flat, bro. Well, they were lying to him. They didn't know it. It was bad information. But if you're living back then, and maybe you're swayed by the idea that the world is flat, that would be a logical argument, right? You can't sail that way and then come back. That's not, you'll die. You'll fall off the edge. Be logical. Follow? Cool. Last one. Ethos is where we get the term ethics or an ethical appeal. Now here again, this has kind of come to mean something else by association now. These terms are thousands of years old, okay? Ethos, we're talking about credibility, okay? Trustworthiness in some capacity, right? And here again, context is everything, and we'll come to context in a minute, by the way. But, for instance, I love to give this example. I feel like one of the hurdles I have to get over as a teacher is this one. I have to convince you I'm worth listening to, right? On the first day, sometimes I have to convince people that I'm not a student, right? Think about it from my side of things for just a moment. What do I have to prove to you that I'm worth listening to about this, right? In the small amount of time we've known each other, I have markers I loosely know how to operate these computers that sometimes don't work, right? I have confidence. I act like I'm supposed to be up here. Yeah? That's kind of it. That's kind of it. No one has seen my ID, right? Your real teacher might need help. He might be in the trunk of my car. You don't know. You don't know. Cast your mind back. I know it was a long time ago to our first class. I know I said something like, because I'm a fool and I don't look anything up enough. I said something like Payne 1101 or whatever, right? What if that was me going, this is the right ring, right? This is the guy that I jacked. He's in my car right now. Is it? Yeah, cool. My class. I'm trying to convince you every day, every time we have class. I'm making ethical appeals to you. I'm testing my credibility. Happens all the time. All right. So as I said, when it comes to this paper, we will, to begin with, be trying to cite maybe different examples of these appeals, okay? But the bulk of our work, 75% of our job when it comes to this paper, is not just saying, oh, that's an emotional appeal. We're talking about credibility here, right? But then to dive into how that appeal is actually working, okay? And you guys are better at this than you think you are. Questions at this stage? Great. All right. Ooh. Now I'm going to turn out the lights. I was worried about the lights, but if that one works, we're in a tomb, so great. Here's what we're going to talk about. All I'm interested in on this first day, if we get really deep into some of these details and we have a good conversation, that's a bonus, okay? What I'm interested in today is simply, I want you to understand by the end of this class, there's all kinds of stuff in a movie like this that you could pull from. You're not going to talk about all of them in your paper, but I want you to see you have a very diverse menu, okay, of options. And what do those options look like? Usually, when we talk about evidence in a class like this, and when we're writing papers, right, you're talking about quotations, language. There's a lot of people talking in this movie. You could use those. You could quote these people. They say some interesting stuff. However, the other thing I want you mindful of when we watch the first scene here in just a second, it's a film. There's visual stuff, right? Sometimes there's cartoons or like graphs or it's just things happening on screen. You can pull that stuff too, okay? Any of it is available. The last thing I'm going to say to you before we just jump right into this and start talking about it. Some things, I should be more specific, some pieces of evidence are more worth your time than others, okay? And what I want you to know is, in this first bit, some of the examples you guys provide might not be as good as the other examples. That's all right. That's part of figuring this out, okay? So don't get discouraged on the first real day of class. This is practice. All right. We're going to start with the very opening of the movie. We're only going to watch, maybe the first 60 seconds, something like that. What I want you to try to do, anything you notice at all that stands out to you as, like it might be trying to do something to you. It might be trying to affect you in some kind of way. If thinking about this triangle a little bit helps, great. You don't have to do that though. I mean it when I say if it's trying to move you in one direction or another, you think it's probably worth our time to discuss, right? All right, we're gonna watch it. We're gonna talk about it. So a lot there, a lot. We have no way to cover all of it, but I'm interested also. I'm about to turn these lights. I'm interested in anything you guys might have noticed, might have stood out to you as somehow trying to work on you in some kind of a way, convince you in some kind of a way, some kind of argument. Yeah?
They start the film with credibility.
Where?
In the beginning. Like they're saying, oh, I'm the co-founder or I started.
Oh, okay. So all these, can we think of language? How would we describe these people?
They're like kind of like I don't know, like the attention they're bringing and stuff. It's almost like kind of somber.
Well, slow down. What are they?
Leaders of the tech world.
Like CEOs?
One or two of them were. Yeah. Well, hey, so if we're talking about credibility, and I think we can with these people, if someone's very credible in a particular field, we have language for that. What is that person?
A credible person.
They're experts. They're experts, right? Some of them are CEOs, others are engineers, and they're, I think, again, a very diverse kind of field from the tech world, but they seem to have a certain expertise, right? All the stuff they're going to talk about and think about and have concerns about that apply to us, according to them, they know way more about, right? That one guy who's like, I invented Gmail chat and the like button, and it's like, okay, you know infinitely more than I will ever know about any of this, right? They're experts. And we started with, this is an attempt at credibility. Okay. There's a connecting piece here that we kind of touched on, but I want to make sure we spell it out. How do these experts, here at the very beginning of the movie, first 3 minutes of the movie, how do these experts try to convince us of their credibility?
By telling us their occupation.
They almost give us like resumes, right? Yeah, like their credentials. And this, you might argue, is enough to try to prove that, right? So again, if we were in ancient Greece, and of course we're not, this would be an ethical appeal, but with our language today, this is an attempt at credibility here. Yeah, for sure. Now, the trick would be, and again, we're not so worried about this today, but I want you to know about it. The trick would be, almost never would you want to try to talk about, for instance, an entire section of the movie. So, I mean, like arguably, the first 3 minutes of this film is mostly this. You wouldn't want to do that in its entirety. You would want to quote maybe one of these people. And it could be any of them, right? Because they all have like pretty fucking impressive credentials, honestly. But pick one of them that stands out to you for some kind of a reason. Quote that person, and then we can talk about that quotation as well, right? Cool. Anything else you guys noticed? Stood out to you? Yeah.
After they established their credibility,
Uh-huh.
we started going into why there's a problem within social media.
Okay. Can you think of, and I'm asking you, but I'm asking everybody, can anybody think of like a particular moment that resonated with you for one reason or another? Like something somebody said, or yeah?
The fact that they didn't say anything when they asked what the problem was.
That's weird, right? They all struggled with that. It's like, that's the whole point of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay, let's zoom in now in the way that we didn't for this first one.
I can see why they couldn't give an answer because it can be a lot of little things and it can be.
Well, for sure, but look, slow down. I mean, I agree with you. I full on agree with you. Slow down. Let's pick one of these people that struggled when they asked that question. Did any of them stand out to you? We're just using our memory, right? Yeah.
That guy didn't say
Is that
anything. Yeah.
What does he do? Did anybody catch it?
He just like, he looks nervous.
He laughs.
Yeah, he smiled.
He laughs.
Yeah, that guy was interesting.
Well, let's talk about this. His name is Tristan, by the way. He is, for lack of a better term, kind of the main character of the documentary. Like, we follow him more than anybody. You have a question?
I remember at one part I went to add.
Okay.
At one part I don't remember which guy it was, but one person said, "I'm trying to give you a definitive answer." One of them said that.
Yeah. I'm bad with names. I actually can't remember his name, but he's one of he's the guy that invented like the like button and stuff, I think. Because he says there's many problems, right? Like I want to. Well, let's stay here for just a second. Actually, it's right here. We could watch it again. Did you hit it?
Yeah, I was gonna say he might think it's obvious.
I mean, I think it's weirdly like both of those at once, if that makes sense. Okay, what William and then here.
I was thinking either it would be like a nervous laugh or like,
I think that's part of it.
or he's just like kind of like scoffing at it because it's like not so simple of an answer, you know?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it can be both because like he understands, and we maybe don't know this quite about him yet, but the more we learn about this character, that's his whole deal. Is he's supposed to be able to tell us what the problem is? And it seems like anyway, he just sat down and they asked him this question, and he's like, hell. He's just a little embarrassed that he doesn't have, like he can't put it into words, right? What did you have, man?
Well, I was gonna say that he laughs more of like a, where should I start type of way.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of the struggle with like not knowing how to put it into words is like you do got to start somewhere, and if you can't start anywhere, then how do you put it into words? Good. So the takeaways from all of that seem to be kind of two things at once. One is he's signaling to us that he thinks it's a very complex issue, right? Yeah. And also maybe a bit of like, I can't talk him right, so. A bit of embarrassment or self-conscious, right, for just a second here in this moment. All right. All of that on the table. All we've done, right, is pointed at a very specific moment in the film, and we've started to kind of tease apart some of the implications. The other way I'll talk to you about this is, outside of the people that are actually actors, because the family, those are actors, right? These are real folks. This is just a dude. This isn't scripted, right? But the people that made the movie edited this, right? They decided to keep stuff in, probably take some other stuff out, right? Where to put things, right? They move stuff all around. So they decided to leave that in, that moment. And I say all that to say, what do you think they're maybe hoping the effect of that is when you see him react like that to that question? What might that do to a viewer? What's the problem? He just goes, right? Huh? The viewer? Why do you say that?
He's nervous to say.
Well, he's nervous, but I'm saying, what does it do to the viewer?
Makes you think. It makes me think.
About what?
What he's gonna say.
Okay. What did you say? I missed that. I'm sorry.
What he's gonna say, like what the problem is.
And you're sort of waiting with bated breath or something. Is kind of what you're saying, like.
Yeah. Kind of.
Okay. Yeah, like anticipation. It's kind of okay. I like that. What do you have now?
But like what you said, because they're experts,
Yeah.
they know way more than we do.
Yeah.
So we might not see it as a problem, or like, I don't know. I mean, I've watched this movie before.
Okay.
But I guess as a viewer, we're trying to kind of see it as like, yeah, kind of anticipation. Like, what does he know that we don't?
Yeah. Okay. So.
Knowledge.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a way to phrase it involving that word. Almost like a. He's unintentionally withholding this knowledge with that laugh. Like it's in his head and he can't figure out how to get it to us in this moment. And you guys are saying in that moment, the viewer is like, okay, we can talk about that in a second. You got your hand up, yeah.
Okay, so my idea was, I feel like when they ask a question what the problem is, I feel like that could also be a question towards the viewer too.
Oh yeah. Well, it certainly asks you to consider it as well, right?
And I feel like because of that, the people who are experts on social media, depending on what platform or whatever they use, their answer might be more complicated for us, like as viewers, to understand what their answer is. So that might be a reason for why they can't give like a definitive answer.
Well, to add to that a little bit, what I would argue for, because again, you have to the best of your ability, remind yourself this is a made thing. This documentary probably took months of people editing it, right, and going like, maybe we should leave this in. No, take that out. Like it's a product. What I would say is, the whole film is the answer, right? And maybe you could argue it takes the whole film to give us the answer because it is complex, because there's a lot of moving parts and they have to like lay it all out. And I'm willing to bet if you gave any of these people like 20 more seconds, like where we didn't cut from them, they would give an answer. But now 5 minutes into the film, you're getting hit with all this stuff and you're like, that's just a lot of information. I don't know if I buy that. You see what I'm saying? So I would argue he can't answer, one, for the reasons that we've laid out, right? But two, the filmmakers don't allow him to answer because it wouldn't work at this point in the movie, right?
Yeah.
It'd be too much. So even, I mean, that kind of doubles down on this, right? That it gets withheld. And it's going to get spelled out, but it's going to take some time, like an hour and some change from here. The other thing I want to consider, we've talked a lot about this. I'm interested in this second one too. Because I think that's different. The fact that he's a little bit embarrassed right here. He's like, this fucking guy asked me this question and I had nothing for him, right? Like, the laugh, I almost feel like he's laughing at himself or the situation he's in. He's like, oh God, right? What does it do to a viewer to see this expert, right, embarrassed like that, just for a second? Just a hand?
Makes him relatable, makes him more human. We can identify more with what he says.
I think so. Yeah? Let's talk about that a little bit. Why does it make him more relatable to see him like this?
Because we all get embarrassed when people ask us questions on the spot sometimes.
Yeah, I like that language. Like he feels put on the spot, which is true. I think that's an accurate way to describe it, right? And you may, all of us have at least some kind of expertise in some kind of thing, right? But if I were to ask you right now, do that, your hidden talent, go. You'd be like, now you'd have a moment, and any of us would. We're going to think about argument for just a second. I like the idea that we're humanizing him. I wonder why we're doing that. Why are we humanizing this guy here at the start of the movie, do you think? Do we need to do that?
He's going to be like the protagonist. He has to be relatable for the viewer
Why?
because they want the protagonist to give the message to the viewer. I don't know how to explain.
This is the hard part. By the way, hey, this is the first real day at class, right? Last day of class didn't count. That was me talking at you about a syllabus. That didn't count. What you're struggling with is the paper, okay? All the words that are going to make a paragraph in the paper. That's what you're having trouble with right now. That's fine. Okay? So let's try to spell this out as a class. You're arguing, you're making an argument, so that's good. Why do we need to relate to this guy? To think of him as a human being? Yeah.
I think it's because they all so far just told you their expertise.
Yeah.
They
all the ways they're not us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Hey, by the way, my favorite, and then I'll come to you guys. Real quick, you might have missed this. I've seen this movie a lot. The Pinterest guy, he says, I was the president of Pinterest, and then he says, I was the monetization guy at Facebook for 5 years. I read that as, I'm currently retired. And he looks maybe kind of slightly older than me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not like us. He's not like us. He's like, I'm going to leave here. I'm going to get my Lambo, right? So it's, but they can still be embarrassed. They can still feel human emotions. That is important. And then your hand was up now.
I think seeing them as more of a relatable person makes someone easier to understand.
Spell that out for me if you could.
Like, if I feel like I can relate to you,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna listen to what you're saying and try to understand that more. But if I think we're at two different social places, I'm already kind of tuned out because I'm gonna think that you all the snap was inside out.
Okay. And maybe even that it might not apply to you in some way because you're so different. Yeah. Okay, cool. So this relatability, we said, humanized, proves to us, and this is maybe, again, we're trying to get into argumentative language, proves to us that whatever they're going to talk about, whatever this knowledge they're withholding right now is, it applies to us, right? Because they're not so different. Yeah, they know things we don't, okay, but the stuff they're worried about is the same stuff we're worried about. Good. Yes, ma'am.
I also think because starting off, they talk about what they do.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like that also intrigues us. Like, you're starting the movie off with your occupation and what
Yeah.
you did in social media.
Oh, so you just find it intriguing, you're saying?
Yeah.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? Like why you think that is?
Well, we know the movie's about social media.
Yeah.
But they start off just saying what they do. Not
Yeah.
really going into depth about what they know.
Yeah. And you're saying it's like odd, I guess, or like something you're not used to, perhaps?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
just like, I guess a weird way to start the movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a pretty dry way to start a documentary, right? Like, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
So for like the relatability, I think
Yes.
they're trying to do it so he doesn't sound like a hypocrite.
What do you mean by that?
Because he worked in the industry and all of a sudden he now wants to make it aware.
Yeah.
All the other people as well.
Yeah. Well, and you could say that for a lot of those people. Like, again, the Pinterest guy especially says something about, I mean, I think a couple of them, but he says something about how no one set out to, like, make a bad thing, right? They thought they were doing good work. Yeah. And it just kind of became this over time. Like, he's maybe doing it in a different way, But yeah, there could for sure, like some of this you could say they're trying to guard against, argue against. It's what's called a counter argument. They're supposing ways that their argument, their ideas might be torn down, right? One of them is, you guys made the shit that you're saying is bad for me, right? So ideas of blame. Yeah, for sure. Oh, and then along with that, this expert deal, the thing we were saying is you said like different social realms, basically. I'm trying to think of a way to sum that up. Just their perspective on the world is so alien to ours, right? That maybe whatever they think is a problem is like, that's totally fine, man. That's not, right? Yeah. Cool. Anything else you guys notice? I'm going to erase this, by the way. So if you want to take notes. By the way, if you don't take notes, you should. Some of you are very funny. You're like, nah, I got it. It's right here. Can I erase this real quick? And some people are taking pictures now. Okay. It's all, hey, man, don't be embarrassed about it. Go ahead and do it. That's fine. If you were really going to look at it later, take a picture. If you're going to see it 2 years from now, I can't believe I took a picture of that fucking movie. That's different. All right. Anything else you guys noticed there in the first little bit of the movie? I got one I want to point out to you. It's fun for me. What about the very, very beginning of the movie? Huh? The quotation, yes. By the way, it's quotation. You won't change your speech, but quote's not a noun, it's a verb. Anyway, quotation. From who? Anybody remember? That was, you almost got it. Sophocles. You might remember the quotation? I'd be wildly interested if you did.
Something about a curse. Everything good in
Yeah.
the world can't come
Nothing
from
vast can enter the life of mortals without a curse. Something like that.
Yeah.
All those, that's exactly how ancient Greeks would speak, right? Fucking Jesus. What's he talking about, you think? Sophocles. Not what he's literally talking about. He's very dead. He was talking about horses or something. But in this movie, what's it clearly supposed to be about?
Social media.
In what way, you think?
It blew up so much that it started becoming.
It's everywhere. Some of you are on it right now. I know. But because it's so everywhere that we don't think about it, right? But it's legit everywhere. Like I'll get an oil change on one of our cars, and we'll get a thing later in our email like asking them to like follow them on Facebook. I'm like, what's happening, right? Like it follows you type of thing. And now there's this idea of a curse. Yeah. Let's talk about a quotation. And I am using my memory, so it might be a little bit wrong, but nothing vast. When it comes to quotations, this is kind of trending toward your homework, by the way. The first thing you want to do is make sure the quotation is correct. So we've used our memory for the sake of time because we are against the clock. I'm not going to do that. This is pretty close, but I would double check. Don't get cocky, right? We got all the important parts. More on that in a second. The point is, you need the quotation. You need quotation marks. Does anybody know what else you need? A couple more things.
Who said the quote?
Whoa, what?
Who said the quote?
Set the quote.
Like who said it?
Sophocles. Yeah, we'll come to that. We need context. I'll talk to you about that in a minute, but I'll put a note up here for us. Sophocles is probably part of our context. Okay. What else do we need before we write anything? There's like one or two things we need. What is it? Capitalize? Capitalize what? Oh, we never start a sentence with a quotation. Not ever. So you don't have to worry about that. Okay? We're going to talk about that in a second. We need something down here, right? Citation. All right. I want to talk to you guys about something. I'm going to say this now, and a few of you are still going to do a thing you don't have to, okay? I'm trying to save you time right now. You are not required to give me timestamps. That's not a thing. It might be a thing in other formats. I don't know. I don't use those. I use MLA. You're not required to give me timestamps. So don't bother with it. It's a waste of your time, okay? All you got to give me is the author. That's the director. All your citations. They just look like that. Parentheses, Orlowski, close parentheses, period. That's it. Super easy. Okay? All right. By the way, what time is it? I'm nervous. I should be nervous. All right. Let's talk about context. Does anybody know what context means, first of all? Okay, it's all good. I've done this before. It matters where you see a thing, right? Context is a setting for a thing. I have an example. If I was like, hey guys, we got to switch rooms, let's go, right? And you guys did that pretty well, I appreciate it. We come in here, and there's a dead body. How would you respond to that?
Probably call 911.
Class is canceled at that point, right? Needless to say. If, however, maybe a couple years from now, some of you are like pre-med or whatever, and you take a field trip, because I don't know how shit works, to a morgue, and you walk in, and there's a dead body. How roughly should you respond?
Probably wouldn't be as bad.
Probably not. Like in your mind, you're going, oh, Jesus Christ, I knew it'd be like this. But outside, you're going, this is normal. is what I should expect, because that's where that happens. Context. Yeah? What you got to do, with quotations especially, but any evidence you pull in these papers, okay, you have to set it up for me. You have to let me know where we encounter, in this case, this quotation in the movie. Where do we encounter this quotation?
In the beginning. The opening scene.
Very beginning. Like the production company or whatever, right? And then this. Yeah? We've not heard from a human being yet. And this is on the screen. That's interesting. The film opens immediately. I'm like kind of doubling down on from the outset with a quotation from Sophocles, who said that. That's our complete quotation. Okay? We have context, we have the quotation itself, we have the citation. Sidebar, real quick. This is important. When it comes to your context, the bare minimum you have to give me, and this is what some of you will give me, unfortunately, is some iteration of Sophocles states, right? This mode may be familiar to some of you, based upon what I see in these classes. The reason you don't do that, or you shouldn't, because some of you will, but you shouldn't. Two things. One, at various points in this semester, some of you will be real worried about the length of your papers. It happens. Look how much longer that is. It's just longer. Tell me more things. You can tell me too much things. But I would rather that, honestly. I would rather you tell me too much than not enough. Okay? The other and better reason you do this instead of this. We're going to talk about this quotation here in just a second. Okay? But more context is going to help us too. We might, if we decide to, talk about Sophocles. That's kind of interesting. And yeah, we get him in this one. Okay, fine. But we also get this. That matters, right? If this showed up, I don't know, halfway through the movie or something, it would, to borrow a phrase from the youth, hit different, right? It has a different effect. Does that make sense? Great. All right. Now, with all of that sort of said at you, I'm curious. We have kind of three options. We have that the film opens with it immediately. We have Sophocles himself. And then we have his quotation. Does anything stand out to you guys as interesting or worth talking about? Has an effect on you in some kind of way? Yeah.
Well, they put that in the beginning, and then they also have someone say, well, we didn't know how this would affect society, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
So it's just like the differences between those are just funny, because like with everything you create, there is an outcome, and that's essentially what it's saying. But they're saying they never did the pros and the cons of.
Well, it turned into a thing they didn't realize, like, that it would get this way. Yeah. What I would say, I mean, I kind of get what you're driving at. I'm worried you're dealing with too many things at once. Try just working with this for right now. Don't worry about what comes. Because again, to be fair, when we see this is all we've seen, right? Is your hand up? I can't tell. Oh, you're allowed to do whatever you were doing. You're very blurry at this range, so Anyway, anything else stand out to you guys? Yes.
I think it's important, as a reader,
Yeah.
if we might not have seen the movie, to put more emphasis on that the film opens immediately, because that puts emphasis that this was the first thing we saw.
Yeah. What about that? Why does that matter? What's the effect? Like, what might it do to a viewer for it to start here?
Keeps them interested.
Yeah, maybe. Why? What about it? What?
I said it pulls you into this.
That's a different way of saying interested.
I think,
What? Yeah.
I think it, because you see it first,
Mm-hmm.
you can tie in the rest of the movie to that quote.
It does. It kind of hangs over it like an umbrella, right? Whatever this old, really dead guy's talking about, he's super dead, by the way. Like, well, I don't want to give it away what he's famous for, but yeah, whatever he's getting out of his quotation informs how you watch at least the next couple minutes. Like, I would argue you probably forget about him at some point when you're watching the movie. But during this whole first part, it's kind of in the back of your brain, right? This quotation. I love how much noise this makes. All right. Hey, what time is it real quick? Cool. All right. So that's kind of in our back pocket. We need this to apply to something, right? Because this is kind of like, without more information, this doesn't help us enough. Yeah? Talk to me about Sophocles. What do you guys know about Sophocles? Don't look him up.
Nothing.
No, you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. You know very little, but you know some things. What do you know about Sophocles? I'll phrase it better. What do you feel like you know about him? Put your hand up.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Is he like a philosopher or within that realm?
Hang on. Why do you say that? And importantly, why do you say it like that?
Because there's other things like ethics and things that could tie into philosophy that he could be a part of.
Why do you think 75% chance this guy's a philosopher? Yeah.
I think because like around the time that he was probably alive, maybe.
Why do you say the time he was probably alive? 1975, Sophocles. Nothing vast, can it, right? Like what?
I just feel like the name is an older name.
Uh-huh.
Kind of names they had back at that time.
Yeah.
And most people at that time, if they were talking like that, were a philosopher, I think.
Okay.
I don't think regular everyday people were talking like that.
Yeah.
I was gonna say philosophy could have been derived from his name.
Oh.
Like Sophocles.
Oh,
philosophy.
no.
That's what
Interesting
I
guess.
heard.
I've never heard that before, but no.
Okay.
Old. I'm gonna say Greek question mark name. I think we all agree on that, right? If it was nothing vast can enter the world of mortals without a curse, Jim, right? Again, it would affect you differently. We assume he's a philosopher, because honestly, we assume this, or some iteration of this, right? But definitely this. And back then, when people had names like that, there was like 3 jobs. Farmer, soldier, philosopher, right? That's it. They didn't have anything else going on. And yeah, he was kind of a philosopher. He was a Greek playwright. He invented the 3rd act in plays. He's so old they didn't used to have 3 acts in a play. Yeah. But hey, thank God for that. We got stuff going on in dramas now. Yes, ma'am.
Is this quote mainly based on social media?
He's never heard of social media.
So he just made that quote.
He said this about something else. We're about to get to the quotation. But before we do that, this is what the point I'm coming to, okay? We assume all this. And look, I know how 2023 now works. None of you looked up Sophocles, right? You watched the movie. That's fine. But you had some assumptions. And they were strong enough, I would argue, that you pretty much took them for granted, right? And it starts with this. Philosopher, old guy who I guess was wise because they're quoting him and this sounds wise, I guess, right? But these assumptions operate on the viewer. You formed an opinion in that moment based on, let's be clear, not a lot of information, mostly based on his name. Let's end that point though. There's an ending point to that when you make these assumptions about him. Super old fucking guy, probably philosopher, wise. So what? What kind of rhetorical appeal might we be making given those assumptions? Is this operating on you? Just this part, right? We haven't talked about the quotation yet. Is this operating on you in an emotional way, a logical way? What's happening here?
Logical?
Well, keep in mind when we're talking about reasonableness. Maybe I think one of our options is a little bit stronger than that, but we'll come back to that. What's up? It's credibility. Old man, philosopher, question mark. Don't you just kind of assume if he's getting quoted in this movie with a name like that, he probably knew what he was talking about? Don't you just kind of give him the benefit of the doubt? Right? You have no fucking idea who he is. But that doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that he has that old name that carries these assumptions, and it just kind of buys him some credibility at the beginning of the movie. That's your argument, if you wanted to talk about that part of your context. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, with a little bit of time we have left, let's talk about the quotation itself. Again, I haven't gone back and looked. I know this isn't quite right. I kind of feel like it's like nothing vast enters the world of mortals or the life of mortals. But we get the important language. And this is what I mean by important language. When you quote for language, not for ideas, not for information. Okay? This is a very important point because you guys were trained by and large by people who were dumb. That's only half true. They were teaching you for tests. You had to take tests. I know you remember them, and they get measured by that, and it decides if they keep a job. So I totally understand why they're doing that. You do not quote for information. If there's information you need to give me from the text, you paraphrase that. Put it in your own words. Say it quick, get it out of the way. If you're going to quote, you do it because you want me to see the words or the phrasings from the movie, okay? Couldn't be said in a different way. It would mean a different thing. You follow? And if you don't, we're about to hopefully spell it out. So, in this quotation, and it's kind of surrounded by crap now, I apologize, it's right there. Let's think about the language in the quotation for just a couple minutes. Is there anything that stands out to you as like, one way you could think of it? We could paraphrase this quotation, right? Nothing big happens without fucking up people's lives. That's what it says. Different, very different, right? What language in here do you lose something when you change it, right? Can you pick anything out?
I say world of mortals.
Mortals especially. Because look, what's he talking about?
Human beings.
Us, people.
But people don't use the word mortal, so I'm not.
No, they don't. And let's stay here for just a second. Why not? Why would it be weird if you had a friend that was always talking about mortals?
It sounds. I would say that.
Sounds old.
Old term word?
Yeah, but what else about it? The point I'm making, it has some associations, right?
Sounds like he's inhuman.
A little bit. Well, and again, and the way we view these guys, right? Like, look, white robes, long white beard. We all see the same fucking guy, right? a temple somewhere with like marble steps. It's all the same.
Usually in, I can't give you a specific example, but I've seen like villains in movies use the word mortal. If you think about it.
Yeah. Well, because they're separate, right? Again, in that dehumanized way, for sure. What else though? Like, there's other associations here and here. I'll let you guys talk. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it's just like, you can tell.
Is it 1:35 now?
Close.
Did I call it?
137.
I'm so good at this.
Just, I forgot.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Like the language,
Uh-huh.
deals with like how people talk nowadays versus.
Yeah, I mean, there's a discrepancy there for sure. And that could also inform this. Like, the fact that he sounds like that kind of makes you think, like, he must have been a fucking philosopher, because that's how they talk, right? Like, yeah. What'd you have?
I was gonna say it puts emphasis on how short life is,
True.
mortality.
One of the reasons we don't use that term is because nobody likes it if you're always reminding us that we're going to die at some point. Fucking Kevin, always talking about mortality. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So look, we are low on time. I appreciate the notification. It's inhuman in a way to remind us constantly of our humanity and the fact that it's waning. Sure. But it's also like, the word I come to is like, it's epic to talk like that. It feels like Tolkien or something. Right? In the world of men. No one says that either. They use the term men, but not like that. Right? But yeah, it sounds like the beginning of people are going to throw a ring into it. I don't fuck those movies. But yeah, it's really grand. It's a really big way to talk. You could say a similar thing, because we're out of time, about curse. How many of you got friends talking about curses?
It reminds me of like witchcraft.
Yeah, what spells, powers, right?
You need some new friends if that's the case.
Yeah, well, the way, because I'm trying to remember my paraphrase, something like, nothing big can enter the life of people without really fucking shit up, right? That's all he's saying. Curse, though, sounds like it has power over you. If I say, man, that's really fucking up your life, well, then you're like, well, get your shit together, man. Like, do something about it. Make a change. Curse, if you've been cursed, there's nothing you can do, right? It's bigger than you. You're powerless against a curse, usually, I think. So, with the non-time that we have, here at the end, if we consider the language, what's his point? His point is some things in the world of mortals, which is us, we're small, we're mortal. Some things are so much bigger than us and more powerful. We're weak, we're helpless in the face of it, if you like, something like that. And now what you would do is think about why they would start their documentary with that idea. Gives you a lot to say, doesn't it? Gives you a lot to talk about. That's how paragraphs work. Okay? There's more to it than that. But I want to recap what we did today, and then I'm gonna say a thing, and then you're gonna go. Okay? Give yourself proper context. Gives us some things to talk about. Okay? Gives us options. Find a good quotation. Quote for language. Quote for things that if you paraphrased it, if you put it in other language, something would be lost. Okay? If you do those two things first, this, which by the way is where your grade comes from for the most part, gets easier. All right? And we are pretty much out of time, so we can't dive into that too much, but that's okay. For your homework, all I want you to do is 2 quotations. Easy. In a document, find me, as the title suggests, 2 quotations. Okay? To the best of your ability. You do not have to give me, by the way, you can if you want, but you don't have to give me any of this. Okay? for this first assignment, all I want you to try to do, find me a good quotation with some good language that does something, okay? Cite it. Provide the context for me. Put it in a sentence. You do that twice. You turn it in on course day.
Any quote?
A good one. A good one. For instance, and I'll let you go. When the guy says, I don't remember his name, like right before Tristan, he's like, I'm trying to think of the problem. There's many, answers I could give you. That's not really a great quotation, right? The idea is good, and we could paraphrase it. I don't know if he's worth quoting. Sophocles is worth quoting, right? 2 of those. All right. I'll see you guys not even Monday, right? A week from today. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.